I'm the outreach lead for the Mount Royal University Library. And I am the one who will be moderating today's session and asking questions to our panelists so that you can find out more about social media marketing. We are going to do a Q&A near the end. So if you have any questions that come up throughout the session, throw them in the chat box. I will go through everything in there in the end, and we'll make sure that we catch as many as possible. If for some reason we run out of time with Q&A and there's still a lot of questions, what I will do is send those questions to our panelists, and any of them will be able to weigh in, and then I will send it out on the email with the recording and the resources. So before we get started, I am just going to do a quick land acknowledgement here. So Mount Royal University is located on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the people of Treaty 7 in southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation, Region 3. All right, so before we launch into the questions, let us find out a little bit more about our panelists. So I'm going to go through our panelists and ask you to introduce yourself and just give us a little bit about how you are connected to social media marketing. And Maria, because your face is on my screen, we'll start with you.
Sure. So my name is Maria. It's so good to be here. It's really nice to interact with people. So a little bit about me. I am a fourth-year PR student, and before I was a PR student, I was actually a pharmacy assistant, which is something that is so out of left field for me. I was not fit for the job at all, didn't enjoy it. And I firmly believe that I had to close that door and just open a whole new one. So 4 years ago, I completely changed gears from pharmacy and enrolled into PR, into the PR program at MRU. And I kind of just submerged myself in pursuit of work that really spoke to me. So all my PR projects were about like sustainability and fashion and store openings and everything that has to do with lifestyle and fashion. And on the side, I filled my spare time with creating content on Instagram. So when I started, I really heavily relied on the stunning scenery that we have, the mountains, the hoodoos. So on the weekends, my audience would see me climbing like mountains with 10 pounds of clothes on my back. And it just, I kind of grew my audience that way because it was interesting to see. It was really grueling, but I really loved it. So since my first year of PR, I have actively applied the strategic and storytelling methodology that we were learning in the classroom. And then I applied it to real people online, and I saw my account grow that way. So since then, it was featured on Calgary on TV as one of the most up and coming and exciting digital creators in Calgary. I was invited to New York Fashion Week, and online, like the online world opened so many doors for me that I thought were reserved for a very privileged people, not people in my position. And it's just been incredible ever since. I've worked with Dyson and L'Oréal and so many other local and international brands. So to say that it's been unreal is an understatement. So I'm excited to share what I've learned so far.
Wonderful, thank you. Karen, I'll let you go next.
Hi everyone, I'm Karen Richards. I'm the Senior Social Networking Strategist at Mount Royal University. So basically that means I've been at Mount Royal for 15 years now, which is kind of crazy that it's been so long. But that means that I actually am so lucky that I was in the position to be a marketing and communications person at the time when social media kind of started happening for universities. So created our first Facebook page back in 2006. Wow. And sort of grew the university channels from there. And now we have over 70 sub-brand accounts. So all of our departments have accounts, and we have about 30 to 35 staff. And so ultimately all of those, I'm responsible for the online brand of the university. So it involves a lot of, my career has kind of gone from promotion to crisis communications and organizational social media. So a lot more behind the scenes. So I nerdily enjoy it. I also love working with students like Maria We had the chance to work on some Taylor Center projects last year, and there's just so many amazing students coming out of our programs, particularly PR, because that's where my heart lies, but also journalism and all types of classes. And I love working with students who just bring their new perspective to social media. So in addition to that, I've created about 10 courses in continuing ed. Just have a new one coming up called Social Media for Advertising. Little plug, but if you're interested in using a budget for paid social, that will be coming out in January under continuing education. And the last thing is that I am the creator and organizer of Poutine with Purpose. So I sit on the board of Mealshare, a charity, and I run this fun poutine event now in Victoria, Vancouver, soon to be Hamilton and Winnipeg and Calgary, in support of Mealshare, using social media.
That's a lot. And I've taken one of your continuing education courses and it's fantastic, so highly recommend it. Jillian, we'll get you to go next.
Sure. My name is Jillian. I am one of the co-organizers of the SC Calgary Handmade and Vintage Market. I'm also one of the co-owners of YYC Girl Gang, which is a group dedicated to empowering women through business. And I'm also a professional photographer. So my role as a photographer probably comes into play most with social media because I'll have brands and individuals contact me to do photo shoots that they use on their channels. And so it's all about working with them to develop a identity through photos that will make them stand out, but also be very individualistic. So yeah, I think that's me.
Wonderful, thank you. Isha.
Hello, my name is Isha Thompson. I am the Content and Communications Coordinator for Mount Royal University Library. I've been here for just over 2.5 years now. It's the second post-secondary I've worked for. And I guess technically my entry point to social media that I can remember was probably way back in my early university days. After Facebook launched, it was like the cool thing to do to get a Facebook account. So that was kind of my entry point as a consumer, but then it became a thread line throughout my career since I started off after my BA, I went to journalism school. And at that time, social media was actually a huge factor in really changing the landscape for journalism in terms of what it was going to look like, what positions were going to be available, if positions were going to be available, and how you told the story. So it was a really, really big part of that. So I sort of had to pay attention from very early on. And then from there into communications, I've sort of always been a generalist. So meaning that in my role, I kind of do a lot of different things, and social media is only sort of one part of that. So I think I'll always be a student of it because it's always changing. There's always something new, but it's been a good ride.
Wonderful, thank you. And last but not least, Lucy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lucy Dunne, and I am the founder of Dunne. And I really started, honestly, with Instagram as like my online journal, my online diary. I went through a weight loss transformation. So I lost 65 pounds, and every day I would come on Instagram and update what I was eating and all these like fun, what I thought was fun at the time things. And that was very helpful for me in my journey, never realizing what the power of this tool could be. Fast forward a few years, and now it's over 65% of my annual revenue comes straight from Instagram. So the power is there. If you're thinking about just like exiting this meeting, please just stay, because I don't have the schooling side of things. Everything I have learned is from a lot of hard and expensive and slow mistakes. So I'm pumped to share that side of it and give people a tangible way of realizing that you don't have to have it all figured out all of the time to get big results. And both on the influencer side, but also now my business, which is online personal training, that's where that over 65% of the revenue annually comes from Instagram, and that's with no paid advertising or anything. So I'm pumped to be here, but I really did just stumble across this whole social media world, never realizing what it could be, and every single day I'm still learning. So that's the fun part, I think.
Yes, and we are all about learning. That's why we're here today. Okay, I'm going to launch into the questions, and we're going to try and get through them quickly. So if all panelists can just keep their answers to a minute or less, that way we'll get the most input into the questions. So we are going to start off with, what are some things to consider when starting a social media channel for your business? Isha, I'm going to get you to start this one.
Yeah, I think that there could be a lot of things to consider, but I think one of the main ones that comes to mind is, I think sometimes when you're starting a business, and I myself have never started a business, but I've worked for teams for small and mid-sized business owners. And, there are a lot of logistics involved, some that are quite grueling, not so glamorous, but you have to get it done. And sometimes social media can feel like the fun part. And that's great. It can be fun. That's good if you're approaching it with that attitude. But to also keep in mind that when you start a social media channel, you have to expect that when you build it, people will come. So you want to make sure that you're able to allocate resources to actually take care of it and nurture that channel. Because what you don't want to see is you get excited, you start it, you abandon it, or you realize you don't have anyone to support it. And then before you know it, you log back in and you have 65 messages of people who were excited to interact with your business, but you didn't get back to them. And then all of a sudden you've lost out on an opportunity there. So really make sure you have the resources to support your channel. I'd say.
Yeah, that's great. Lucy?
I would say I'm a big planner and preparer, so I would work on like a 30-day time block for when you're starting out and just set some really simple, tangible goals. So whether it's post 1 time a day, spend 15 minutes replying to messages and engaging with the community, and then maybe 1 or 2 stories, like get it. I'm talking specifically Instagram here, but this could apply to other channels. Get a plan for 30 days, be consistent with that plan. And then after that 30 days, I believe you should then reevaluate and reassess, because now you have some knowledge, now you have some data, now you have some information. Whereas when you're just starting, it's like kind of throwing it all at the wall, trying to see what sticks. And so after that 30 days, it's very hard to then say it didn't work, because you actually know what did work and what didn't. And then you can readjust from there.
Yeah, definitely. Karen?
I would agree with both of those wholeheartedly. I think one thing, resources are so big, planning is so big. I think that businesses sometimes don't realize that it's meant to be a two-way conversation, and that's what, when you create that Instagram account, your audiences are like, great, now I can actually talk to you. I can ask every question every day, multiple times a day. You are kind of setting up that expectation. So I think the one thing is to just plan ahead and prepare for customer service and real-time conversation. So social media shouldn't be just sort of a standalone afterthought, like a poster for your business, and an online poster. It should be a way that you can actively communicate with your customers, but you do have to put in so much work and time and plan for it.
Yes, it takes a lot of time. Maria, I'll get you to finish this one up.
For sure. Well, everybody had amazing tips. And I think the most important thing when I think of social media is the type of value that you're going to provide to your audience. So like any business, you're there to fulfill a need, and things are no different online. So you need to understand what sort of value you're bringing to the online community that you're serving. Social media is a great marketing tool and great communication tool to build awareness, but the power in it is really in that two-way conversation that you have with people. So defining the conversations that you will be starting is really crucial, especially in the planning stages. So you could say, okay, for Monday, if you're a if you're in a healthcare business, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to do meal prep. On Tuesday, I'm going to think about, routine and so on. And having that conversation piece in mind will really help you align your content.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, next question. How do you choose the best social media channels, or should you just have accounts on all the platforms? Lucy, we'll start with you.
When I first started, I remember someone was working on my website, and down the bottom I had all of the links to all of these social channels, and she was like, what are you doing? You're not even on Snapchat. And so I recommend just going first where you naturally gravitate towards, because I think then it's the least barrier of resistance for you to actually do something on it. But then I'm a big fan of data and stats, and so looking where your audience is hanging out. If you have an industry that requires a little bit more professional, swing on things, maybe LinkedIn is a fun place for you and Instagram won't serve you. But I know that I get a lot of people asking me like, my industry isn't on Instagram, and I will just like say every single time, like, that is not true. They might not be there as like a business account, but the people that are making big decisions are on these social media accounts. And so paying a little bit of attention to, like, if your target audience is, 50-year-old women, like, where are they hanging out the most, and doing a little bit of research. You can find it easily from Google where those people are hanging out. So I would say that's how you should choose if it's not something where you're just like naturally good at it.
Yeah, audience is a huge thing. Isha, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think everything that Lucy said definitely makes sense. I'll just sort of add that, yeah, I'm a big fan of slow and steady wins the race. So I definitely don't think there's any point in having a presence on every single social media channel when you're first starting, especially if it doesn't make sense for your industry. I think start small and then build from there. So if you're starting with Instagram, create that Instagram page and make it really amazing. Invest all your social time in there, and then build on it from there if it makes sense. But you'll be surprised that the people who maybe don't usually come to Instagram will typically find you if they hear about your business, and then you're serving them in the best way if you have that content set up, as opposed to having all the channels, but you only have time to sort of post, once every 4 weeks because you're just, stretched too thin.
Yeah, definitely. Maria, what are your thoughts?
I mean, these ladies nailed it. I think one thing to consider is to definitely secure a name on the big five. So you're like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest. And then after that, kind of putting it to the side and figuring out what sort of medium you're more comfortable in producing content in, because it is such a time-consuming task that you want to make sure you're comfortable. So I think, for example, the content that you're going to produce on Instagram is going to be totally different for something that you're going to do on YouTube, right? So defining your social media goals and how those tie into your business, it's super important when choosing a platform. So if you want to do like quick behind the scenes, if you're like a coffee company, for example, that would be great for Insta stories on Instagram. And the video content for that is not as intensive as producing a YouTube video. So I think having those goals would really help when choosing a platform.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. All right, next question. What should be in place before you go live with your channels? Karen, we'll start with you on this one.
Thank you. I have quite a bit to say about this one because I think it's so exciting, to create a channel. And I do see a lot of clients or businesses that sort of, they get their name down and a cover photo and a profile name and a bio, and then they go live, and then things happen. So a few things to consider, sort of from behind the scenes, especially if you're going to use your social as a business. Make sure you have complete control over your accounts as a business. So that means setting up your social accounts as business accounts, such as Facebook Business Manager. And that will allow you to invite different individuals that are going to work with you to be admins of the account. But if they happen to leave your organization, you can sort of manage that, invite new people as you need them to manage. You can control the roles of people. It also allows you to have control over your advertising. It's just a good practice, I think, to just make sure you, and keeping passwords, two-factor authentication, just really securing your business, and then picking and choosing who you allow to be your admins. Another one would be to set up your own social media guidelines. And that can be different for everyone, but You don't really want to wait until you have an issue involving your business where customers are posting articles about your business that are negative, or trolls or negative comments. You don't want to wait until that moment to figure out what you're going to do. So I would suggest work with your team if you have one, or the owner of the business. Think about the top realistic scenarios that could happen to your business as a PR issue or crisis, and just figure out what would we do in that case on our social channels. So if people are posting on your Facebook page, or you post a beautiful photo of the mountains and they say, you don't return customer calls, how are you going to respond to that? Who is going to respond to that? And part of that, if you're able, is to make sure there's a direct communication channel between the person running your social accounts and the owner or leadership of your business. It shouldn't be separate. You are speaking on behalf of the company, or even your small business, so you need to have that sort of communication channel. And also, just to make sure what Maria was saying, and Aisha, about your social channels, make sure you have a bit of a purpose for each channel you're on. Copy and paste shouldn't be your strategy. If you have one video, it can be hosted in full format on YouTube, but it could be chopped up a little bit in great ways for Instagram, for Twitter. So just make sure you have a purpose for each channel.
Yeah, those are all great points. And Lucy, I'll have you on this one as well.
I think I already answered this one. Maybe it's for Jillian. Maybe. I feel like I answered it. Maybe I didn't. Oh, Courtney,
you're on mute.
Jillian, if you have something to add, please feel free.
For sure. I think one of the things that we kind of forget about social media is that we are using it sometimes as individuals, not necessarily as a business with lots of people. A lot of times it's a sole proprietorship. And the idea that that you and your business aren't necessarily like you can just like pry them apart sometimes. And so I think one of the things that especially now I would go into if I was setting up my social media channel all over again is start with some boundaries. Like, what are the things that I will and won't discuss on social media? Because I think, especially with some of the smaller businesses, like the handmade businesses, seeing that behind the scenes, how things run, can be a very great way of interacting with your customers and your followers. But maybe sometimes it gets a little too personal and there's stuff that you don't particularly want to share. And so one of the things to consider would be, what are my boundaries with this?
Yeah, that's a great thing to keep in mind. Okay, next question. What is one thing that you think businesses often overlook when creating their social media channels and strategy? Aisha, do you want to start this one off?
Sure. Yeah, I think sort of one of the main things, and this sort of touches on a point that was brought up a little bit earlier, is just sort of acknowledging how it's a two-way conversation on social media. I think sometimes that can be overlooked. And specifically what I mean is, I think when you create it, sometimes you can have really great intentions. It's a great way to showcase what I do, to speak to my audience. But also keep in mind that I find that oftentimes the type of questions or inquiries or engagement you get on social media is going to differ quite a bit from your other channels. So meaning the way that your customer interacts with you, if they send you an email or they call your business, or, if you're a brick and mortar, walk into your business, is going to feel different than social media. So anticipate that. So that might mean that means you're going to be prepared to sort of respond. Maybe you're going to give yourself the boundary, within 24 hours, you're going to be checking that, because I feel like sometimes people can be a bit more, I don't want to use the word impatient, but, really expecting that immediate reply on social media, whereas they might kind of be okay with 24 to 48 hours on email. It just kind of works that way. So I think really anticipating that you're going to have to wear different hats when it comes to engaging with your audience in those different areas is a big one.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm definitely guilty of being that person that if I call a business like Expedia or something and they're not picking up their phone or I'm on hold forever, I will just shoot off messages to all their social media channels and be like, hey, I have a problem. You need to fix this now. Lucy, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm going to switch gears to the content side of things. I think just from time and time, again, learning this the hard way, keeping it really simple with the content creation. People are often on these social channels to be entertained and to be, you know, they're trying to kill time or whatever's going on in their life. They're not necessarily, as much as we'd like to think of it, they're not necessarily coming on Instagram, finding your business to purchase your services or your products. And so when we grab them with entertainment or something that's nice and simple, that can lead to later down converting to a sale or whatever our goals are. And so keep, just as an example, it's like you could go to Pinterest and find 5 billion smoothie recipes, but some of my best performing posts are a simple green smoothie recipe, which to me is like, this is the most simple, basic thing ever. And I think for businesses, we can overlook what we may think is simple and easy. For other people, it's really helpful and it can be really, it can perform really well on social. So keeping it simple, entertaining, and adding value, I think would be something that's often overlooked for companies on social.
Yeah, definitely. I think I found you through like a collagen post or something. Karen, what are your thoughts?
I love that because I know from so many years in the business that it's really marketers that love to overcomplicate things because we get bored with our own content and we don't realize that sometimes our audiences actually want that, just that simple, direct content related to our business. So I really love that. For me, it really does get back to dedicated resources. I think people just don't realize how much time it actually takes to monitor and manage accounts, to create that content, to prepare ahead of time. We even at Mount Royal, we have under our guidelines, we do have for customer service, for example, we ask our accounts to answer questions within 4 hours. We do have suggested activity levels, so meaning how many posts, so 5 posts on Facebook, daily posts on Instagram, daily posts on Instagram stories, 5 to 7 tweets per day on Twitter. And you know, sometimes people will be shocked by those levels, but that's what it takes, and that's why you don't want to be on too many at the same time. But I would say that in terms of a dedicated resource, if you can, make sure that that's part of a person's job, at least part of an actual job where it's acknowledged and recognized that they're going to spend, we recommend between 5 to 7 hours per week per channel as a minimum. Because that includes research and answering questions and sourcing photos and immersing yourself in the community and you know, getting into conversation. And I really feel that that person who manages your account should be trained in your brand. So understand what your brand is so they can speak on your behalf. And also have some backups and content contributors in your business that can help them. So they're not all alone.
Yeah, having a team definitely helps. We're very thankful for Isha in the library. So what are some ways that we can increase engagement and grow a following on a social media network? Jillian, do you want to start this one off?
Sure. I think it was Isha who said it earlier, slow and steady kind of wins the race. And I think we don't often think about consistency being a big thing on social media, but it definitely is. If your images always have a similar vibe and you're always putting out content that your followers really enjoy, what you'll find is you keep retention is more of the thing, because you don't want somebody scrolling through and then all of a sudden you put up a post and they're like, who is that? They're very visual. You want it so that somebody looks at the picture and they know the username without actually reading the username. And so encouraging that, and then encouraging some way of sharing, like, you know, you give little tidbits, little things that are kind of like little free samples of the work that you do that cause people to kind of share it around and do things like that. One of the things that we see a lot of success with for SC Calgary is doing giveaways and things like, for a small investment of us to pick up an Etsy gift card, do a giveaway actually gets a lot of people excited. And then we also know that that money is getting funneled back into one of our local sellers. So that's kind of like a really good way of doing it, to kind of get a big one-time jump of followers. But then you need to keep being consistent in your posts after that to keep them there.
Yeah, and that's great. Building those relationships too, not only between you and your followers, but you and other similar social media marketers and networks. Maria, what are your thoughts on this?
I think the biggest, there's so many tactics, but the biggest thing that I have learned that worked for my channel is consistency, like Jillian said. So scheduling and voice, specifically voice, is one of the most important things. So in a time where we are overloaded with so much information, people really gravitate towards authenticity. And I think they're very starved for it. So being vulnerable online is actually like one of the best things that I've learned that worked for my channel and for my business. So I find that people really like to see the entrepreneur behind the business. So tell the rag to riches stories, tell your narrative, because it will make you more relatable and you will build that trust with the community, which will eventually translate, hopefully, into real sales. And then engaging with people online. I, for example, allocate an hour at the end of my day to just go to accounts that are similar to mine and just talk to people. Anything that has to do with fashion and lifestyle. If I like something, I will go ahead and DM someone or comment on their photos, and that will prompt them to actually go onto my page and also interact and engage with my content. And then the last thing I would say is don't overlook hashtags, because a lot of the times they don't work, but when they do, it really, really shoots up your discoverability and engagement. So the trick to strategically doing is to kind of use hashtags that are niche, medium-sized hashtags. For example, the word love, like hashtag love. If you post that on your photo, good luck. Like, you'll never get discovered because it will get buried because so many people use it. So having those niche things that really relate to your photo or to your content really help, because that way you will rank on the top search, and I'm specifically talking about Instagram here, that will help you rank on the top search. So most likely the people who are also using that hashtag will go ahead and check out the content.
Oh, that's a great tip. Need to format my hashtags from now on. Lucy, what are your thoughts on this?
I love this, and I had written down, just so I didn't forget as everyone was talking, and Maria, one of the things that you mentioned is exactly, I have an Instagram workshop actually that I teach, and the going to other accounts and interacting with those people has been a game changer as far as growth for my account goes, because in my opinion, you're already getting in front of these people who are interested in what you're offering, interested in what you're putting out, and you don't go in with your sleazy car man sales with those people. Just go in and talk to them and engage with them and actually, like, become friends with them. And that's the power of Instagram. The other piece that I don't want to skip by though, again, I'll go back to data and analytics. So if you have a business account, go into insights and you can look at your top performing posts. So usually you can change this to a number of years back, and then you can toggle between things like reach, comments, likes, shares, and you can go into all of this data. Right now, saves are really performing well in your posts. So my advice, if this is real time for you and you're watching this, go and have a look in your data around how your post did with the most saves, and then recreate some content around those top 3. And so that's how I create all of my content for the month, is looking at those top 3 performing posts for my historical data. And I'm just repurposing and recreating and redoing sort of the same content, but in a fresh way, obviously with some gaps for current things that look good and feel good and just need to be shared. But that data won't lie to you. And so it's a powerful tool to use when you're looking at how to actually grow and increase that engagement, increase those followers.
Yeah, those analytics tools are so helpful if you learn them and tap into them. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Let's talk about some general rules for images and videos in social media. Karen, you want to start this one off?
Sure. So as an organization, we have, a lot more people, taking photos, images. So for us, and for me, part of my job is just to be we err on the side of caution. So we're very strict about copyright. And so we just want to make sure we have a strategy around photos. And so we try to only use copyright royalty-free images from sites such as Pixabay. Otherwise, using our own photos, using our own boomerangs, and creating our own GIFs as boomerangs, and really just making sure that we always get some kind of permission, whether it's verbal. For our social channels, we don't need a signed written release for our photos, but we do try to also think ahead and work with photographers to create photo banks, sort of anticipating some of those photos that we might use general student life or general teachers with students, or now we're actually scrambling now to try to create new photos of online learning and online teaching, to try to show that authentically with real people. But really I would say don't ever use another account or even your own audience's photos without at least permission on the social channel. I've heard that over the years quite a lot, of how frustrating that is when you post a great photo and a brand kind of steals it and they don't give you credit. They take out your caption and they just use it. So I would say don't do that, because it actually can backfire on you if the person whose photo it is posts on your brand page saying, hey, you stole that. You didn't even give me credit.
Yeah.
And the only other tip is, if you are going to do large ad campaigns with paid social, just to really go the extra step to tailor the sizes of your ads, so that because if you put out an ad campaign on Facebook, they can go across Facebook, Instagram stories, Facebook stories, and Messenger, but those are all different sizes. And if you don't do the work for the ad campaign, they'll kind of squish and stretch them. So that's my other tip.
All right. Jillian, what are your thoughts?
I think sometimes we kind of get too stuck on the trends within something. Like I said earlier, you want to make sure that people see the photo and they think of you. And like a few years back, it was bright white. Everything was bright white, and that was fine. But for some people, that didn't really make sense. And so thinking about what your message is, like what your feeling that you want to convey with these images are, is going to be a really big help in kind of planning what photos you're going to create. And like Karen said, like make an image bank of stuff that you can use on topics that you're going to talk about in the future, or they're going to keep coming back into your feed. And if you're doing it carefully and you're thinking about, does my brand have a warm feeling, and then you're using warm colors and bright sunny spaces, or is my brand a little bit more on the soothing, cooler side, then maybe it's a little darker. And as long as you're keeping these things in mind, and your photos kind of sit next to each other on your grid without it looking like jarring between the two, that's going to be kind of a really good way forward of making sure that you're visually staying on topic.
Yeah, usually when I follow a new account, I will go look at their grid, and there's nothing more pleasing than one that is so aesthetically laid out and well thought through. Lucy.
Very true. I heard from a friend a while ago that when someone's thinking about following your account, they'll go on, and then it's 1, 2, 3 scrolls before they decide whether or not they're going to follow. So if all those images kind of have the same feeling or the same look, that's going to make a difference.
Yeah. Lucy, what are your thoughts?
I'll, of course, echo what the other lovely ladies have said, and then I'll just add in one thing. Video right now, the numbers, again, they do not lie. it doesn't mean that you have to create a YouTube channel and start producing high quality edited videos, but video is engaging, it's entertaining for people, and it just, the numbers are staggering around how much like people are engaging with video versus a static image. So even if you're turning a static image into having some sort of like thing floating on the top of it, or just some movement on that static image, which you can use free tools like Canva for. I know a lot of people use that to create, they use their image that they were going to post and then just add something moving on top of it. So of course, I'll echo what the other ladies said, but don't rule out video, even if it's not supernatural to you. Doesn't mean you have to get on video and put your face there or anything like that. There's other ways you can make moving things that are going to perform really well, because those channels are giving credit to things that are not just static images right now.
Oh, that's a great tip. Isha, you want to finish this one up?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add in terms of video. I agree with Lucy. I think a lot of people are really excited to use video, and I get it. There's a huge impact there. I will say, and I'm going to call myself out with this, is really make sure you're doing the planning before you create that video in terms of what you want to shoot, and more specifically where you're going to share it, because the video is going to look very different in terms of dimensions if you're going to do it on IGTV, whereas YouTube, whereas Facebook. And I've caused myself a lot of stress creating the video, and then, you know, I changed my mind. I actually want to change, you know, share it here as opposed to there. And it's a whole lot of stress in the editing process. Whereas it's better if you do all that work, all that thinking beforehand. And that can kind of dictate even like what shots you're getting, even your script, and then of course how you're editing it. And it goes way smoother as opposed to doing it after the fact.
Yes, planning is key. Okay, we've got about 3 minutes before we launch into Q&A. So I'm going to pick a couple of questions that I think we can just wrap up a couple of quick answers with. When is it worth paying to promote your business on social media? Lucy?
People are probably going to hate me for this, the people that are like doing these paid advertising courses and things like that. I have wasted so much money on paid advertising, and it's simply because I believe that with the gyms and the fitness and all that industry, if I want to compete with that, I got to pay some big bucks. And I tried it and it didn't work, and I swore to myself I would never do another paid ad again, and I haven't for over a year now. And so for me, I don't think that it needs to be part of your strategy. Obviously, if that's what you're going for and that's where you want to invest your dollars, go for it. But my personal opinion is that you can have massive growth and you can have massive impact without having to spend $1 on those channels.
All right, budget friendly. I like it. Karen?
I agree. From I consider myself a word of mouth marketing. That's sort of my niche expertise in marketing. And that's all about working with not even paid influencers, but brand ambassadors, or just those customers that always share your posts, always like your posts, always take your surveys, volunteer for events, really connecting with them in a real way, like actually emailing them, asking them to participate, giving them some of your key messages, your channels, maybe involving them in a product launch or that kind of thing. So working with, they're called micro influencers. So you don't pay them. They're already promoting you because they have a interest in you or like you. And I think long term, that really develops relationships. And those are the people that will refer you and leave reviews that other people see. So to me, that's the real value. But times when you could or should pay is the biggest one if you have the budget. A lot of us don't. So we sort of look for real ways to engage. But if you do happen to have a spare $20,000 that you could use, it can be good to sort of reach audiences beyond your own social channels and even your own influencer channels. But what I would say is just make sure before you do that you do have a good organic or word of mouth strategy in place to complement that paid. You want to make sure if you're reaching someone who's never heard of you and they come to your Instagram channel, that there's some really amazing organic conversations and customers talking about you. And just also make sure that you're prepared for that and that your customer service is ready. And I really like using, my new technique this year is really utilizing Messenger, DMs. So allowing customers and actively engaging with them on private channels so they can ask whatever they want, even using WhatsApp, connecting that to your Facebook page. Those are the things that will set you apart, but I think you should also have those in place with a paid campaign, because people will just come out of nowhere, click on your ad and start asking you questions. If you're not prepared to answer, they might be gone, and it's just sort of money wasted. And also, as Lucy was saying, use those analytics to measure what works with paid, so that if it's not working, don't ever spend money on it again.
Yeah, very good. Okay, we're going to launch into the Q&A. And you mentioned a couple of resources, Karen, which is great. What I think I'll probably do when we're finished is I'll get all the panelists to just send me any resources that they mentioned throughout the panel. And if there's any that come up, we'll just add them to that Google Doc that we were working on so I can share it with everyone who attended. But let's jump into the questions. So I know some of these were answered within the chat, so I will try to skip over those ones. Does anyone have a recommendation of a program or aid to help with building a 30-day social media plan when first starting out? Lucy, I think you answered this in the chat, but you just want to tell everyone so that the whole audience knows in case they weren't reading?
Yeah, totally. So one tool, it's a small fee, but Later, I think it's later.com, Later. They're my favorite as far as the resources they have around planning, scheduling, posting, and things like that. I personally use a project management tool. It's called Asana. It's a free tool as well. I'll put it in the chat here. I use that just because that's how my whole business and with the team and things like that is run. And so that's how we plan, and it has a calendar and to put things out of 30 days of content works. But if you are looking for more of a social media tool, then I would recommend Later.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Later. Next question. Is it still a good rule to pick 5 hashtags you used and then engage with 10 people on those hashtags right after you post on Instagram? And Maria, you spoke to this, but I'll let you speak to everyone on this.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's actually a strategy that I use myself. So right after I post, I go into the hashtag that I posted with and engage with everyone. So this is on Instagram, and there are 2 windows. I think there's the top posts, and then there's the ones that people are just posting consistently in real time. So you want to go on the second window and engage with people there, because they're posting from within like seconds, in contrast of the top photos that performed well. These are things that like people have posted last week and there might not be online immediately, so you kind of want to reach them right when they're there on Instagram, on the platform.
That's a great tip. Bernadette wants to know, if your business is just you and I, or you and one, what is the best use of your time? So if you were, I'm guessing, and Bernadette, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're going to put your efforts into one thing, what's going to be that best thing? Isha, do you want to talk to this?
Sure. Yeah, that can be kind of hard to decide on, just because I think there can be a lot going on. And I'm guilty of that. I say I'm going to focus on one thing, and then before you know it, I'm sort of in a black hole trying to do all the things. So, I think my best advice is just start somewhere. I think oftentimes people just freeze and they get overwhelmed, and that stops them from starting. So even you can kind of go with what you're just naturally drawn to. So if you love taking photos, maybe that's somewhere you're going to start in terms of exploring that, in terms of taking the best photos you can, editing platforms, play around with it a bit, and be great at that. And then maybe you're going to bring in some help to actually write the content, if that's where your weak point. But just kind of start somewhere. And oftentimes you can kind of choose that based on where your passions are. It can be a really, really big help and not make it such a chore.
Yeah, that's great. And like you said, don't be afraid to ask for help. There's so many people that are doing things out there. Even if you can build those relationships, I'll help you with some photos, you help me with some wording, and we can have this like nice symbiotic relationship. Eva would like to know, in terms of creating a brand for the sake of aesthetics, where can free customizable frames, etc., be found? Jillian, I'll go to you on this.
Like frames for filters?
Yeah, she just said frames, etc. So I think
Okay.
Looking for things to make her posts seem similar, even if they aren't necessarily.
Right. I would think a lot about editing. So there's a couple of great apps that you can use for editing your photos, and one of them is called A Color Story, and another one would just be the Adobe Photoshop Express. And those are two ones that I find really useful. What you want to do is kind of think, what can I do to make my photos stand out? And one of the things that often does it is contrast. So any photo you take with your phone or even just camera needs to be edited just a little bit. Kind of getting that formula that you normally do in editing is going to be a great thing. So whether you go in and you tend to add a little bit extra saturation to make your colors pop, or you tend to go in and add a little bit more contrast to make everything stand out a little bit more, being consistent with something like that is kind of a good thing. So A Color Story and Adobe Photoshop Express are great ones. And everyone's talking in the chat about Canva. And Canva is great if you're trying to do a logo, or maybe like a banner for an event or something like that, where you want to make something really, really visually appealing that looks really put together. That's a great resource as well.
Yeah, Canva is an amazing tool. If you don't know about it, the free one you can do a ton with. But if you're wanting to do what Karen said and making sure that all your content is formatted for different platforms like your Facebook and your Instagram and that, if you invest in the pro version, it will let you do that automatically. It's just like a click of a button and it will change that sizing for you, which is super helpful. Kimberly would like to know, how do you organize and collaborate on social media posts with a team? Are there tools or processes that you use? Karen, do you manage?
Sure. So because we do have, 30 to 40 employees and 70 plus accounts, plus the 7 that I manage, it's a lot. So we have to really spend a lot of time on the resources. So what we use as a university, as an organization, we use Hootsuite Enterprise, which is sort of the mothership of, a huge organizational tool. But it's amazing because it does allow me to act as an editor and assign suggested posts and tasks, and we can talk back and forth. We can have a content library in the background, share images, consistent images. We can schedule posts. We can monitor our analytics. But the real talk about organizing is I love to use Google Docs. So for every single, we have a content calendar per month, which just shows you like at a glance what's happening on each social channel. And then if you kind of delve into each day, there's a Google Doc with a complete plan, including what images, who's responsible, if we've hired a photographer, if there's a video, what are the assets, what channels and what time. And so a lot of that has to go into Google Docs, which I love because we're a Google organization. So we can have Google Drives with photos, and we just have to be like overly organized. So I would say Google and then Hootsuite for us. And we do use Canva also as a university.
Wonderful. Okay, Megan would like to know, how long did it take each of you to get to the following you're currently at? So there's 3 of you that are really big on social media. I'm not going to talk about the MRU accounts because those are a whole lot of stuff. Lucy, we'll start with you on this one. And maybe just say, if you want to, say what your followers are at and how long it took you to get there.
Yeah, you're not going to like this answer, but I just hit 20K, but it took me over 3 years of posting pretty much every single day. So that to me feels like a bit of a slog, but the data doesn't lie. And over 60% of my revenue comes from Instagram every single month. And so those are engaged people. Those are followers that, you know, you didn't pay for. It was organic. And so that's, I believe, what I just have to like, I'm like, I see the accounts, right? And you have that comparison game where you're like, oh my gosh, they have over 100,000 followers and they have like hardly any posts. And you just can't, you got to remove that. You just got to like keep doing your thing, stay in your lane. But yeah, 1 post a day, ton of stories every single day for just over 3 years now. And just broke the 20K follower mark.
Woo woo. Maria.
Very similar to Lucy, but a little less on the numbers. So I'm at 8,500, and that is a span of over 3 years consistently posting. I have taken some breaks because I am a full-time student as well. But actually a very, I guess, fascinating thing in terms of numbers, I was able to grow my account by 8,000 organic followers within, I believe, 3 or so weeks. And that was during the Black Lives Matter movement, because I was at the forefront of the conversation, providing a biracial perspective of what it's like to be a person of color in Canada. And from there, you know, my posts were reshared, and just really being authentic and talking about things that are mattering right now really helped me grow my account.
Well, and that goes back to the point you made earlier about vulnerability and really
Exactly.
on there. Yeah. And Jillian.
I think our Etsy Calgary account is at 18,000 followers, and I want to say Girl Gang is probably around there as well. They both took probably 3 to 4 years of posting to really get there, and we don't actually use the Girl Gang account much anymore. It's in transition. But for the Etsy Calgary account, my co-owner Lindy, she posts daily, and it is like, do not forget to post on the account, because Instagram will definitely start to penalize you if you aren't posting often. You start to get like pushed down in the feeds of people that follow you. And so if you're not willing to post daily, it's going to be hard. So making sure that you do that scheduling that we were talking about earlier, where you're planning out your posts and thinking about, oh, how am I going to keep up this momentum is a big thing. But yeah, I would say it probably takes about 3 or 4 years of regular posting to get there.
And I don't know if this goes without saying, but you'll often come across those ads and stuff being like, grow your followers by this many people and pay us some money and we'll get you a whole bunch of followers. Don't do that. You, like everyone here was saying, you want really engaged followers that are actually going to connect with your message and be able to share it with word of mouth, like Karen was talking about. So please don't, if you're going to put money into anything, don't let it be that. M. Shaw would like to know, okay, they said later.com or Hootsuite. They heard that Instagram penalizes does not like Hootsuite. Does anybody use Hootsuite for Instagram?
So I've used Hootsuite, both Hootsuite, and then later on switched to Later. And I prefer Later a whole lot better. Just because with Hootsuite, I've been having a couple of troubles of actually my posts going live. And for someone like me, a content creator who's partnering with brands, those deadlines really, really matter. So I couldn't afford that. And then personally, I also like Later because of the flexibility. It's much more user-friendly, if you ask me. It gives you a lot more tools, like the link in bio if your account is over 10,000. And it also gives you weekly performance analytics, which is great. Something that I think everybody touched on. You can kind of adjust your social media strategy according to that. And it's real numbers every week, which I think like Instagram is great for that as well. But I think Hootsuite is more comprehensive in terms of breaking down that data.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Alini wants to know, any tips for someone looking into starting a career in online or social media marketing? Karen, do you want to talk about this?
I would say to explore some of the channels that you're most comfortable or interested with personally. Really, really immerse yourself in it and sort of, get a feel of the culture. And then if you can, simultaneously take some courses. Of course, Mount Royal Continuing Education, plug. But in addition to that, if the industry that you're in, that you're interested in, find some people that you think you're impressed with that do really well, that you follow, that you like, and just really watch what they do, see how they do it, watch their consistency, their hashtags, their images, everything, and just try to make notes and emulate. That would be one way to just get yourself in the community first and then get some training.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I realize there are some questions in the chat that did not get answered, but as I said, I will forward those to our panelists here. And if anybody is able to weigh in through email, I will send that out when I send out resources. I don't have our next panel lined up quite yet. I'm still trying to finalize some details, so stay tuned for that. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists, Karen, Lucy, Jillian, Isha, Maria. Thank you guys so much for being with me today. These are all amazing females doing so well with social media marketing. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Have a great day, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave this open a little bit in case people want to throw more questions in the chat. I'll wait until everybody disappears and then I'll close it down.
I learned so much.